All right, 20 seconds.
Thank you.
Live from the Civic Media World Headquarters in Madison, Wisconsin, it's the Todd Allbaugh Show. And now, pursuing truth wherever it may lead, here's your host, Todd Allbaugh.
Across Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network and streaming worldwide on the Civic Media app. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Todd Allbaugh, along with the fantastic Mr. Aaron Zommers on the board, our producer and engineer. It is 6 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock on this Monday, May 19th, 2025. It is a great day to be Wisconsinite. Welcome in, back to work, back to school for most, although a lot of the universities and colleges are out for the summer. Some of the high schools finishing up, lots of graduations coming up this weekend. I will be attending one at, almost said Madison Memorial. No, Todd, you're going to Eau Claire Memorial. My favorite youngest niece, Isabel, graduating this weekend. We're going to be doing the show up in beautiful Chippewa Valley in the Eau Claire area on both Thursday and Friday of this week. We may even get our friend Pat Kreitlow involved on Friday on Lake Wissota, weather dependent. Stay tuned for that. On Wednesday, Aaron Zommers will be doing the show from beautiful Kopke's Greenhouse in the town of Dunn, just outside of the city of Oregon. Looking forward to that. So big week lined up, Zommers.
Oh, yes. Lots of travel, lots of prep for next week. All kinds of things going on.
All kinds of things going on, and looking forward to it in nervous anticipation. Big show today, coming up at the bottom of the hour. State Senator Kelda Royce from the 26th District, which encompasses much, if not all, of the city of Madison. She is a member of the Joint Committee on Finance, better known as JFC. She's going to be along with, going to be a weekly thing, or as much as her schedule allows, and we appreciate it so very much. Senator Royce is going to be here talking a little bit about what's happening on Joint Finance Committee, and also how this affects all of us as Wisconsinites, because, of course, this is the Budget Writing Committee, the committee that takes care of the spending of the vast majority, if not all, of the tax money that we pay in to the state coffers. There is now, according to Bob Lang, the indisputable director of the finance, the state's finances, the finance director, Bob Lang. According to them, the state of Wisconsin now has a $4.3 billion with a B surplus. So, lots of money to go around. And that you would think that would mean, hey, great, we've been fiscally responsible as a state, so why don't we take a look at our state priorities and say, how can we give some of this money back to the taxpayers, to Wisconsinites, in terms of services, whether it's K-12 education, whether it's childcare, that might make some sense. Unfortunately, there are some folks, keyword some, from my former party, Republicans, who either A, don't want to spend any of it, or B, want to give it out and Republicans and Democrats, let's be honest about this, over the years, have been guilty of this. They like to say, oh, let's give it back directly to taxpayers in the form of basically a rebate. So they want to send us all anywhere from $100 to $200 or $300, which, you think, well, great, that's nice. Nobody's going to say no to $100, but could that money be better spent on services that the vast majority of Wisconsinites need? So we'll have that discussion with Senator Royce coming up after the news update at the bottom of the hour. Then in hour number 2, we have Tom Kircher. Tom Kircher from Wisconsin Watch is going to be here. Now, here's the deal. We had Jack Kelly from Wisconsin Watch, but like most of the men in my life, he left me.
Well, he didn't leave you.
No, not me personally. No, Jack has gone on to great things. He has a new personal opportunity within the University of Wisconsin Vet School, and very, very happy and excited for him. But we're going to miss him at Wisconsin Watch. But now we have Tom Kircher, who is we're going to have our first date together. Our first on-air. We're looking forward to having Tom from Wisconsin Watch. Going to talk a little bit about the Republican State Convention, which was held in Rothschild, I believe, over the weekend. We're going to play a clip from that in a minute. But Tom will be here, update us on some of the happenings, the Wisconsin State Republican Convention, what news came out of it, if any. And also, he wrote a great piece at Wisconsin Watch on a bit of bipartisanship. Yes, as a matter of fact, I think it's always important in these days of hyper-partisanship. There are a few things where Republicans and Democrats are working together. One of those, in terms of energy and the future of nuclear energy here in the state of Wisconsin. Tom wrote a great piece on that at Wisconsin Watch, so we'll talk about that with him as well. And we have an egg edition of What's Worse, Sunny Side Up or Over Easy.
Luke Mathers will not be pleased as a known disliker of eggs.
He is an anti-eggite, to use a Seinfeld term. He doesn't like eggs. I love eggs, as a matter of fact.
Me too.
So we'll talk about that. Also, Wendy McMahon, president of CBS News, is out, resigned this morning as the Trump administration continues to try to pressure CBS and Paramount Global over their coverage. We'll talk about what it means to, again, a further chink in the armor of the free press in the United States of America, and have some fun a little bit along the way as well. I want to talk to you about the Milwaukee Brewers for a second. They're back in action on the Milwaukee Brewers radio network across many of the stations here at Civic Media, including Richland Center, Oshkosh, Racine, Kenosha, Park Falls, and Hayward. They're playing tonight against the old Baltimore Orioles. Game time, the pregame show set for 6:05 tonight across many of our stations on Civic Media. So be listening to that. The Brewers taking on the Baltimore Orioles. Great story on ESPN today on the website. A great written story, an actual written story, not video. Great written story on Christian Yelich and his travels, his relationship with the late, great Bob Uecker. And now Yelich sees himself as really a leader in the Milwaukee Brewers clubhouse. Here's something I learned, according to this story, which I thought was really, really cool. Yelich took it upon himself to mentor some of these guys like Bruce Turang and Sal Frelick, who are now either in their second or first year, respectively, full years as big leaguers. And when these guys, and even Jackson Churio, when these guys got drafted by the Brewers, Yelich took it upon himself, even though he was at the top of his career at 18, 19, 20, those years. These guys were starting out as 18, 19-year-olds, and Yelich started texting them directly, just saying, hey, how are you doing? Welcome to the organization. You're going to make it up to the big show, as they call it, at some point. Anything I can do to help you get here, don't be afraid to hit me up. And continue to reach out to them as minor leaguers. And Turang and Frelick, Churio, saying how much that meant to them to have somebody, everything that was going on with Yelich, yet he cared enough about them as people to build this relationship. So by the time they got to Milwaukee to join Yelich as a teammate, they already had this friendship, this relationship, and Yelich credits that to Bob Uecker, saying that when Yelich got traded from Miami to the Brewers in 2018, the Brewers sent a plane to pick Yelich up, and on the plane was Robin Yount, iconic Milwaukee Brewer, and also Bob Uecker was on that plane. And that from that day, Bob Uecker taught Christian Yelich, look, it's just about building relationships, man. Asking people, hey, where are you from? Where'd you grow up at? What do you like to do outside of baseball? Just getting to know them as people first. And that's more important than saying, hey, what did you bat last year? And I thought that was such a great takeaway, a great lesson, once again, that we can learn from sports, from the great late Bob Uecker. As we say on this show a lot, just get out and talk to people. Have a relationship with a real person, and that's really what builds community. So thought I'd pass that along for the what it's worth department.
It also makes perfect sense. Like, if you're on a team with somebody, you want to be able to know them. I mean, otherwise you're not going to be able to really see what that person's thinking and know what they're going to do and know that they have your back.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a good weekend, Summers. Stay around here. Where'd you go?
Yep, I stayed around here. What did I do? I always have trouble remembering, even though it was yesterday and the day before.
Well, I found my way up to Shawano, Wisconsin, hung out with my dad's stepmom a little bit, had a good time with them, toured around Shawano Lake. Good time had by all. And then found my way to Richland Center before the weekend was done and checked in on some friends there. Saw mom for a minute and then back. So lots of windshield time, but all in all, not a bad weekend at all. Glad to be back with you. Like I said, it's going to be a big week. This week we'll be on the road at Kopke's Greenhouse in the town of Dunn here in Dane County on Wednesday, and then 2 shows up in the beautiful Chippewa Valley on Thursday and Friday. All right, we're going to talk a little bit later to, as we said, Tom Kircher from Wisconsin Watch about the Republican State Convention in Rothschild over the weekend. But I wanted to start out with this because I thought this was pretty good in my opinion. So Derek Van Orten, the Trumper from the Trump congressman from the 3rd District of Wisconsin, was up there and talking to reporters as he likes to do. And one of the reporters asked him, I believe this is Emily Fannin, asked Van Orten, and by the way, Emily Fannin is from CBS 58, great television station there in the Milwaukee area, asked him, why do you think Republicans have been losing in the spring elections for Supreme Court? And basically Van Orten says, because we have too many elections. We're going to let you listen to it in the original vernacular. And then the reporter goes up, and the same reporter, and asks Brian Schimming, the chairman of the state party, do you agree with Van Orten? And he goes, I always agree with Congressman Van Orten. What do you say? He wants to get rid of spring elections. I mostly agree with, here it is. Here's Van Orten and Schimming this weekend at the state Republican Party.
What do you think went wrong, or what goes wrong in spring elections here in Wisconsin?
Republicans don't vote, period. Like, we just don't vote in spring elections.
How do you change that?
I don't think we should have a spring election. I think we need to, these guys in the State House, I think they should get rid of that and fold it into a midterm or a 4-year cycle. It makes no sense for us to have 3 elections a year. Why do we do that? Just even from an efficiency point of view, it doesn't make any sense. Spending money doing this, campaigning, people running around. There is exhaustion from the previous election, and it's just not functional. And so the time, place, and manner of elections is determined by the State House, and I think they should get rid of the April election and roll it into one of the 2-year cycles.
I agree with what Derek Van Orten said.
He just said he wants to get rid of spring elections here in Wisconsin.
I agree with almost everything that Derek Van Orten said.
That is classic Brian Schimming right there.
That is hilarious.
Isn't that great? So again, Derek Van Orten, Congressman Van Orten from the 3rd District, wants to get rid of spring elections. Just have one big old election in November. And then the reporter, the clip, you can't see it obviously through the radio, but it flashes a few minutes later. The same reporter asks the state party chair, who, by the way, hung on to his title as state chairman over the weekend. He was challenged. It was shot down. And the reporter says, do you agree with Congressman Van Orten? And before they could finish, she goes, I always agree with Congressman. What do you say? He wants to get rid of spring elections. I mostly agree with Congressman Van Orten. And a big Schimming laugh.
I don't want to put words in Schimming's mouth, but that laugh kind of sounded like it translates to, lay off the sauce, Van Orten.
Right. What do you think about Derek Van Orten calling to get rid of April elections in Wisconsin? 855-752-4842. 855-752-4842. Come on back. It's a Monday edition. It's the Allbaugh Show, and you're listening across Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Madison's real news and great conversation. 92.7 WMDX.
Blind Shot Social Club.
You know, he was slurring his words. I know that's just kind of how he talks because he's drunk most of the time. No, I mean, that's just kind of how he talks.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, yes. We don't know that. It's just that most stories I've heard from people who have personally met him say they walk into his office and the first words out of his mouth are, you want a beer, as he's cracking one open.
Of the Black Convergence Show, and I'm inviting you to the Black Brilliant
Sad,
Gala
bad,
hosted
not
by
glad.
Urban Triage on Saturday, May 31st at the Overture Center for the Arts. Join us for an elegant night celebrating unsung heroes. For ticket information and to learn about sponsorship opportunities, please visit us at urbantriage.org. That's urbantriage.org.
You know Ignite Glass and Gifts 3 locations in Madison.
Can you cue it back
but you
up
can
to
also shop IgniteGlass
the
and
reporter
Gifts.com.
going to Shimmy?
You'll find
Just that
grinders, lighters, collectibles,
I'll call for it.
hand-blown
I'll set it
glass
back
water
up.
pipes,
I'll say, once again,
artistically
here was
designed
Shimmy's
jewelry,
reaction.
and plenty of other items delivered straight to your door or to family
and that, for
friends.
those watching the stream,
Madison's
that
favorite
was
for
this is a
glass gifts
mild
and
Shimmy
bake.
smile.
Ignite Glass
This
and
is
Gifts.
but now
Monona Drive,
imagine that
Williamson Street, and O'Dana
at
Road.
least 3 times
Plus,
as loud
Glass
and just
Gifts.com.
guttural. Just Shimmy has a great laugh. I'll say that.
Remember, we're a team that plays together. Listen, the winning will take care of itself. We just have to get everyone involved.
In interscholastic sports, we celebrate what makes every one of us unique. And in the pursuit of a common goal, everyone in the huddle, in the bleachers, and in the community comes together. This message presented by the WIAA and the Wisconsin Athletic Directors Association.
Destination marketing organizations are working to ensure Wisconsin tourism is stronger than ever. Their work boosts Wisconsin's economy, supports jobs, and improves
This song
our residents'
definitely has
quality
nothing
of
to do
life.
with the current story.
Sponsored
Don't worry
by
about it.
Destinations Wisconsin.
Everybody wants.
Pour me something tall and strong, make it a hurricane before I go insane. It's only 12:30, but I don't care. It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. 22 now past the hour of 2 o'clock of the Civic Media Radio Network. Is the Jimmy Buffett shingle, is that on the Van Orton door in D.C.?
I don't know. I didn't know that had anything to do with the Van Orden story.
Oh,
I just
all
like the song.
All right, very good, very good. Talking about the Republican state convention over the weekend, I'm going to do more on this subject in hour number 2. But played you the cut there from CBS 58 over the weekend when the reporter asked Congressman Van Orden, why do you think that Republicans, even though it's technically not a partisan race, we all know that Republican Party backs the conservative candidate in judicial races and the Democrats back the liberal candidate. So why is it that liberals keep winning the Supreme Court races? And Derek Van Orton claims it's because we have too many elections. Just, there's too much democracy going around. And say he wants to get rid, Derek Van Orton wants to get rid of these spring elections in the state of Wisconsin. And then the reporter goes up to the state chairman of the Republican Party of Wisconsin, Brian Arthur Schimming, and asks him if he agrees with Derek Van Orton. Here is the reaction from the Shim Sham.
I agree with what Derek Van Orden said.
He just said he wants to get rid of spring elections here in Wisconsin.
I agree with almost everything that Derek Van Orden said.
I find this highly entertaining because back in my days as a Republican, I sat down at he likes to hang out at the Edgewater Pier here in Madison and have a Diet Coke. Schimming does not drink. And so he has a Diet Coke down on the pier of the Edgewater. Back in the old days, he used to go down there shirtless. And when he gets going and telling stories, and he has some great stories. He has a great laugh, a guttural laugh like that. He likes to pound the table when he tells a joke. So when he finds out that one of his own congressmen wants to get rid of these spring elections, he quickly amends his comments to say, I agree with most of the things that Congressman Van Orton says. The bottom line is Derek Van Orton is too wackadoodle, even for the chairman of his own party in the state of Wisconsin, Brian Arthur Schimming. What do you think about this? A sitting United States congressman calling to get rid of the spring election in Wisconsin. 855-752-4842. 855-752-4842. Jameson in Pennsylvania says, I'm in PA, so my voice matters less there on this. Like 2 elections, primary and the final, in the rare need a special election. Otherwise, here in Pennsylvania, we have closed primaries. So independents don't get to vote, and you can only vote by your party. I think that's a big problem, too, for another day. Actually, Jameson, this is a really great subject. And yes, we don't have time right now to suss this out. But I was talking to a longtime friend of mine who has worked in politics. I will not name him. But he brought up just this morning to me about this subject, that if Wisconsin would have open primaries, meaning that I think most people know that right now when we go to vote in a primary election, you only get to vote for one party. So you can vote in the Republican primary, the Democratic primary, the Green Party primary, so on and so forth. But you can't vote for one candidate in the Republican primary and another candidate in the Democratic primary. And then if we had open primaries, you might end up having more centrist candidates get through. Now, the argument is, well, the other major opposition party is going to mess around, quote unquote, in our primary. So let's say there's a Republican primary for U.S. Senate, but there's none on the Democratic side. The Democrats would go vote for the easier candidate to be on the Republican side. Maybe. I don't know. But wouldn't it be refreshing for people to vote for the more centrist candidate? It's a little bit like ranked choice voting or fusion voting. The idea is so that more centrist candidates make it through primaries instead of the people who are so stringent on both sides of the aisle. I think it's a decent idea. Tony watching on YouTube says, I like what Joe Zepecki said to you, Todd, about primaries. Quote, more democracy is never a bad thing, unquote. Well said, Tony. Of course, Joe Zepecki running to be the chairman of the Democratic Party in Wisconsin. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, we'll continue to find. Again, in hour number 2, we're going to talk with the Wisconsin Watch folks about more. There was actually a straw poll over the weekend at the Republican Party convention asking the delegates, and they worded it. Some people would say it's a little odd. They worded the question. Right now, the U.S. Constitution bars anybody from having a third term. Assuming that doesn't change, who do you like? And I honestly think the reason they did that was because they had to qualify it, because if they just said, who are you backing in the 2028 Republican primary right now, overwhelmingly, they would have said Trump. So they had to kind of qualify it like that. All right, coming up here after the break, going to do a little news, weather, sports. Pam Yonke, by the way, who was on our friend Jane McNair's show this morning, McNair on Air. Listen to that. Was fantastic. Pam Yonke giving some great advice from the Midwest Farm Report, talking about mental health and farmers, and giving out some. If you didn't hear it, go back and listen to Jane's show this morning on the podcast. You can also check out Pam Yonke at Midwest Farm Report. Really great information on mental health for our farmers right now across the state of Wisconsin. But they were talking this morning a little bit about mental health and farmers. And when we come back after the Farm Report, we're going to talk with one of our great state senators here in the state of Wisconsin. Kelda Royce is going to be in talking about the state budget and the Joint Finance Committee. The Milwaukee Business Journal. The group is backing the University of Wisconsin's calls for increased public funding. We'll ask Senator Royce her thoughts on getting more money to the UW system. That and more when we come back as the Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Tom Hartman here. You're listening to 92.7 WMDX.
Enjoying this local program? Find the complete Civic Media lineup at civicmedia.us or the Civic Media app.
Well, Wisconsin's got a new Alice in Dairyland, and her family no stranger to the position. I'm Pam Yankee with a quick update on what's happening in food and farming news on a Monday. We'll introduce you to her next.
Hey, got yield? The Wisconsin Soybean Association is excited to announce the 2025 Wisconsin Soybean Yield Contest, highlighting the innovative production practices of Wisconsin soybean growers. The Yield Contest celebrates soybean growers across the state and their dedication to improving their operations. 2 winners will be selected from 4 geographical divisions, with additional awards available. Entry forms must be postmarked by August 31st, so don't wait. For more information, visit wisoybean.org.
Today.
Sarah Hagenow from Foynette has been named the 78th Alice in Dairyland. The big event happened Saturday evening in Prairie du Chien, Crawford County, acting
Can
as
you
host.
turn
This
my
is
mic
a
off just for a
position
second,
that Hagenow
please?
says she's looked forward to.
All right, off.
What?
Can you turn my mic off for a second, please? All right. I thought maybe we'd start a little bit. There was this column on the Milwaukee Business Journal, just Rothman calling for more money for, I still call it EW System because
I know.
I don't like the name.
Because we're old. And it's
We're
hard,
not old.
hard to learn new
We're
tricks,
just-
Todd.
I just don't think it's prudent to spend $500 million of taxpayer money for rebranding of something that I thought was pretty damn good. But that's just me.
Well, it's not just you.
So we can talk a little bit about that, get your thoughts on that. Or is there anything else hot right now in joint finance you think we should, any areas you want to focus on? Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Which isn't unprecedented, but
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I don't have any sound here. in my
Oh,
headphones.
sorry.
That's all right.
Test.
There we go.
All right,
Good.
it's too loud. Loud.
That's fine.
All right. Testing.
Flirting with
Uh,
then a chance of showers and thunderstorms.
Did we touch on last time that Lang said that, what is it? It's 4.3 now?
Tomorrow morning,
Well,
and it won't let up, giving us
I
some
actually I
soaking
think the
amounts.
numbers hadn't
It'll
quite come
also
out.
be
but
windy.
we
All
were
right. Is it
anticipating
4.3 or
Just but near
4.4
low. It's 50
billion now?
degrees at our
I think-
studios.
The John and Gordy Show.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right. All right. Still holding steady at 4 billion plus, we'll call it.
Yeah.
I just think it's important to keep reminding people that there's money there to be spent if we want to spend it prudently.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
As long as you don't create another big massive deficit
Right.
on the back end.
That's right. Yeah.
And the Civic Media app.
All right. So I got that.
The Maggie Dawn Show.
Professor Howard Schwaber.
The point is worth making that an individual government official with the power to know.
All right, we got about 30 seconds.
Thank you so very much.
I stay out too late. Got nothing in my brain. That's what people say. That's what people say. I go on too many
Welcome back to
days.
Todd Allbaugh show on the Civic Media Radio Network. 35 minutes now past the hour at 2 o'clock on Monday, May 19th, 2025. Our next guest happens to be a Wisconsin State Senator representing the 26th District here from much of the city of Madison, the University of Wisconsin-Madison amongst them. She is a member of the Joint Committee on Finance, and as the song said there, played by Zommers, happens to be a Swiftie mom as well. How cool are you, Senator Royce? Thanks for being here. How are you?
Well, maybe cool for the Senate, not cool according to my kids. And that's, I think, what matters.
Well, yes, at home, absolutely.
Yeah.
Senator Kelda Royce is our guest. Senator, always glad to have you on. I appreciate you making this effort through the committee process, the budget process for JFC, and kind of cool. Our world headquarters are a block away from the Capitol. But not a lot going on in the Joint Finance Committee now, for the second week in a row?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we are, at this point, we should be knee deep in the budget process. But the Republicans can't seem to get their act together on even kind of straightforward agencies where we haven't been noticed for any hearings this week. And they said they were going to give us 72 hours notice, which puts us already at Thursday afternoon. So likely we weren't in last week. We're probably not going to be in this week. I don't know when we're going to pass this budget. I mean, if we're not even getting to it before Memorial Day, we're going to have a very difficult time meeting the needs of our local governments and school districts and passing that budget by the statutory deadline.
Not necessarily unprecedented, but I think it's fair to say maybe unusual to go a full 2 weeks this time of year without any meeting at all.
Very, very unusual. And I think, there isn't really a good reason for that other than just the internal politics of the Republican caucus. They just can't get together on this. They can't agree.
That's what fascinates me as a former Republican, that my former party just can't seem to get their stuff together. We'll keep it clean for radio, Todd. But I find it fascinating when they have the control and remind people the makeup of this. There's only 4 members, correct, of the minority party on JFC.
That's right. Yeah, that's 12 members of the majority Republican Party and 4 Democrats. So it's not like it's close. Like they could afford to lose a couple members on some of these votes if they needed to, but that's just not how they've operated. They don't allow any dissent within their caucus. So whatever they do in that closed room, they just come out there in lockstep.
Which seems odd to me again. And we've heard stories. I know my colleague Jane Matnier on her show has talked about this, that, and full well, but for our listeners that might not know the process, these meetings tend to be long. That's not unusual. Right. But we had a couple here that drove all the way from Barron, almost 4 hours last week to come down to talk about childcare with their elected officials. And at least the assembly was in session and that individual was here, and they would not even meet with the constituent. As someone who served as a staffer in that building for a long time, I just find it abhorrent that, I guess I'll ask it to you. The commute for your district is pretty short, but if you have someone from your district that wants to at least say hello, my guess is you probably do everything you can to take time for that.
I do. And, I'm often double and triple booked because I'm on multiple committees. But I think that making sure that your constituents get to see you and talk to you and yell at you or shake your hand or whatever it is a core part of the job. And it's really disappointing. My office actually ends up responding to a lot of people and they say, we didn't hear back from our representative. We've emailed, we've called. The only person who wrote back was you. And, you don't even represent anywhere near our district. Yeah. But I think people deserve to be heard.
I do too. And again, this issue of not meeting for now seemingly going to be 2 weeks.
Yeah.
When we have issues like childcare, and again, for our listeners that weren't with us on Friday, as I understand it, Senator Royce, to help me, correct me if I'm wrong, that this was already a problem that childcare folks were facing prior to the pandemic.
Oh, yes.
Pandemic comes along. Federal money comes in to help, but basically becomes a Band-Aid. Now the federal money isn't going to be there, and now Bob Lang at the Fiscal Bureau estimating we're still at $4 billion plus in state surplus money. It would seem to me that there should be some dollars to make up for that loss of federal aid.
Absolutely. I mean, our child care system is facing collapse already. It's incredibly inaccessible for people, right? There are so many more kids that need slots than for every slot. In a lot of parts of the states, it's 3 or more kids for every 1 slot that's available. And then even if you do get a slot, the cost is unaffordable for parents. And, I had my first kid 11 years ago. I had to get on the wait list years before I was pregnant to get an infant slot. Yeah. And with my most recent baby. We had 2 kids in college at the University of Minnesota. It cost less to send those 2, my stepdaughters, to college than to send our one baby to daycare as an infant.
Wow.
Right? And, and parents just can't afford it.
What our guests on Friday from Barron County said they heard from Republicans in the state capitol, and I believe, I'm staying corrected, but I believe at least one was on the Joint Finance Committee. They looked at this couple, how much they're charging per student in Barron, and put the blame on the provider and said, well, you have a bad business plan. You can't be charging that low of a rate and still make it. And they said, that's all. You can't charge the prices that folks do in Madison or Milwaukee because the folks in Barron don't have that high income. If we charge a higher rate, we're going to be out of business and our clients will have nowhere to go.
That's right. I mean, what Republicans are really saying is having kids is something that only the wealthy should be able to do, right? And also that investing in that time of life when 90% of brain development happens for birth to 5, that we just don't care. We have no interest as a state in supporting that. And to me, that is crazy because we understand as a society that it benefits all of us for every kid to have a good public education. That's good for us. It's good for our economy, for our society, keeps them out of trouble. That's why we have public higher ed, because we want smart people to have the opportunity to live the life that they want. Why don't we do that? And the most expensive and the most crucial time of childhood, birth to 5, to say nothing of the fact that we need those parents in the workforce and they want to be in the workforce so they can support their families.
We're talking with State Senator Kelda Royce here of the 26th District in the Dane County area, most of the city of Madison here, certainly on the west side, talking about her role in the Joint Finance Committee. Senator, you also serve still on the committee that oversees higher ed in the state of Wisconsin? Or are you off that now?
I'm off that now, but I still obviously follow it closely because I'm very passionate about higher ed.
Well, you represent the flagship university, University of Wisconsin-Madison, which I got my Motion W hoodie on. Mom would be disappointed. She doesn't like me to wear a hoodie on the air, but I'm representing UW, Mom. I'm very passionate about it, as you know. I know there was an article in the Milwaukee Business Journal over the weekend, and President Rothman of, I still call it the EW system, says Milwaukee business groups back, they now call it University of Wisconsin, calls for increased public funding. I find this interesting, Senator, because business folks are not, quote unquote, left wing softies. They're about job creation. I said derogatory term that the right uses, but the business community is about job creation. They're about having people prepare. We did our show at University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee about a month ago or so, and folks down there are so integrated in both the business community and making opportunities, although they don't use the term DEI, of course, but about having opportunities for folks from all different backgrounds because they're like, it makes Milwaukee better. Talk to us about, do you think that Republicans are going to find some sort of compromise with you folks on the Democratic side to get more funding for our UW system?
I mean, I hope so, because our universities have been cut and cut and cut for 15 years as costs have been going up. And that is not sustainable. No matter who you are, Todd, or where you're from in the state, if you're willing to do the work and you want to go to college, that should be a pathway for you. That is what our public universities are for, so that we're not leaving anybody behind just because their parents weren't rich enough or they didn't come from the right zip code, right? And if we want our public universities to succeed, we have got to fund them. I mean, I'm a small business owner. I'm an entrepreneur. And I was just touring an incredible small business in Janesville this morning. About 300 jobs. They are working literally on solving the energy problem, on nuclear fission, one of the most incredible potential opportunities. And by the way, along the way, they're detecting and helping to treat cancer. Wow. So this is a company founded by a UW PhD in nuclear physics. He hires UW graduates. He hires people from the technical colleges. He said if it weren't for that, his business couldn't be here. And if we want businesses like that create good paying jobs for their communities, we have got to be funding the universities of Wisconsin.
As you travel around the state, I was up in the Green Bay area this weekend, and there's a strong tech program in that part of the state, as there is across. I still believe that our tech universities, colleges have a vital role in this state, but it seems to me that politically speaking, that those two entities have been pitted against itself, that the Republicans have basically said, oh, you don't need a liberal arts degree, a 4-year degree. You can just go to the tech schools. It would seem to me that our 4-year graduate programs are vital, particularly in the STEM areas of engineering and building a new engineering school here at Madison. But how do we get rid of the partisanship, Senator, and focus on the true needs of us all Wisconsinites and providing educational opportunities for everyone?
I think those kind of divide and conquer arguments, I mean, my God, those are like a generation out of date. We need to be thinking about how can we help everyone thrive? How can we have a productive economy in a world that is dominated for good or ill by AI? How can we equip people to do work that is meaningful for them and lets them support their families while still having time with their family and being able to live in a community where they can afford housing, right? Like these are the big problems that we need to be tackling. And the idea that we're going to be pitting some forms of education against others, I just think is so ridiculous. Like we don't have the luxury of arguing over this nonsense that Republicans want to keep us mired in the past. We have to think about what is the vision for the future and how are we going to help make sure that the next generation is able to thrive and access that part of the American dream of wanting your kids to live in a better world than we did. Because right now, our kids are not getting that from us.
If you ruled the world, one of my former bosses likes to say, if you were the committee co-chair or if you were governor and could write it in your own vernacular, what do you think the best path forward is for, I'll still call it the University of Wisconsin system, recognizing there are new challenges, but how do we still fund them to keep it viable? The Wisconsin idea that the borders of our state are the borders of our university.
I think we make a real public commitment to funding the university, but also keeping our hands off it. One of the problems that our universities have had is that the legislature wants to control who gets to teach, what they teach, what books the students are able to read. Can they build a new dorm? To me, that is crazy. No other Big Ten university operates under those kind of antiquated constraints. So I want to listen to and learn from the smartest people, whether it's in physics, whether it's in engineering, whether it's in healthcare. I also think, when we think about a new technology-driven future, the humanities become even more important, right? The ability to communicate with each other, the ability to be creative in your thinking and strategic, things that AI can't really do well, right? We have got to, figure out what it is that is special about humans and be investing in that. And higher ed helps us do that.
I'm calling audible, so I apologize. We're going to be talking with Wisconsin Watch here in the next hour. One of the stories by Tom Kircher, he's going to be our guest, is entitled Bipartisan Support Builds for Studying Nuclear Power in Wisconsin. It's SB 125, introduced back in March, which will require the State Public Service Commission, which regulates electric and gas utilities in Wisconsin, to conduct a nuclear power siting study. Feelings, thoughts?
Well, I think that nuclear certainly can be part of the mix, and it is worth studying. I don't know that the state should be paying for that. I mean, generally, it is the power companies that are supposed to pay for those kind of studies. And, that if the legislature thinks it's a worthy idea, and it certainly may well be, then they should have included some staffing and some funding for it. Because we can't just keep asking the PSC to do more with less.
Always comes down to the dollar sign, right?
Sure does, Todd.
State Senator Kelda Royce, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you as always. We'll talk to you next week. Find out maybe the Howard Markland has called a meeting. How about that?
Love it.
All right. Thank you very much. Senator Royce here. Come on back. Talk a little bit more before we get into the Wisconsin Watch portion of the show. We'll listen to the Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Come work with us. Civic Media has a number of great jobs across the state. Open now at civicmedia.us/careers.
If you love animals and want to help in Dane County, shop, donate, or volunteer at one of Dane County Humane Society's thrift stores. They sell gently used and new clothes, home goods, toys, furniture, and more. All proceeds support the comfort and care of animals in need. Dane County Humane Society thrift stores. Shop Thrift Store West on Watts Road and Thrift Store East on High Crossing Boulevard. Visit giveshelter.org/thrift to learn more.
Keeping you connected to your local community with good news and great conversation. Here's Terry Barr with the Civic Media Radio Network.
It's a hit. Milwaukee Brewers baseball cards are being shared in several communities across the state. The partnership is with police officers in Green Bay, La Crosse, Kenosha, Milwaukee, and Madison, and meant to be an icebreaker. between the cops and
Pour
kids.
me something tall and
Here's
strong.
Brewers President of Business Operations, Rick Schlesinger.
Eventually want to do it to more than just the major cities. So we're trying to get around the state as best we can and to sort of engage with our friends around the state. We're a statewide
No,
team.
that
we're
was
not just a
great as
Milwaukee
always.
team.
Yeah.
So see an officer, ask for your own comic book style baseball cards featuring all your favorite Brewers players. Until next time, I'm Terry Barr.
Did you know VA home loans are a key to home ownership for those who served?
In the military, we make a lot of sacrifices, and with the VA loan, it makes it easier for us to get a home.
We were able to purchase this home and then use the money that we were going to use as a down to
certainly
actually
is,
fix
Tony.
up
She
the
certainly
home. I would tell anybody who is interested in getting a VA loan to just do it.
To learn more about VA home loans, visit va.gov/home loans.
Nightlight with Pete Schwaba.
Hello, Bluey.
Talking with our pal Stuart J. Waddles. This is an episode of Bluey that Stuart turned me on to. I like this show so much. Would it be weird if I left my wife, remarried, and had kids with someone else just so I could watch Bluey with my new set of kids?
I don't think it'd be that weird. I've heard a weirder.
You
It'd make a great story.
You get the exclusive.
Nightlight with Pete Schwaba. Weeknights from 6 till 8 on your local Civic Media radio station and on the Civic Media app. The Maggie Dawn Show.
Professor Howard Schwaber.
The point is worth making that an individual government official with the power to know.
Pursuing truth and having a little fun along the way. Welcome back to the show, everybody. Zombers on the board, Allbaugh on the mic. It is now 8 minutes before the hour of 3 o'clock. Coming up in hour number 2, a little what's worse for you. Sunny side up or over easy? Eggs, that is. What's worse? By the way, did you know that our owner and CEO has chickens?
Sage Wild has chickens?
He does. He was offering.
I did not know
He
that.
said they have a plethora of eggs, and he was willing to give some away. So how about that?
This is what I get for muting the general chat.
He's a multi-talented guy. He can run a media company. He can write code, and he raises chickens. So how about that? So maybe he has feelings on the sunny side up or over easy. We'll talk about that in hour 2, and also going to chat a little bit about Wendy McMahon. The president of CBS News announced this morning she is stepping down, resigning, as the tension continues to rise between the Trump administration and CBS, Paramount Global, the parent company of CBS News now. And they want to do this merger with another big media company, not quite as big as Paramount. And Sherry Redstone, which owns CBS Paramount, she really wants to get this merger done, and so she wants to appease Donald Trump. Because Trump is saying, if I don't like you personally, I will basically tell my FCC, it's not his FCC, but that's the way he views it, to say no. And so apparently Sherry Redstone, the owner of CBS Paramount, is at odds with Wendy McMahon, who, by the way, the final episode of the season of 60 Minutes, the quintessential news program at CBS, they had their last regular show of the year, of the broadcast year, because now they go into kind of reruns and they kind of refreshen some of the episodes over the summer, but they take the summer off. They'll come back with all new episodes in the fall. So the last episode of 60 Minutes aired last night, and it was this morning that Wendy McMahon said, I think she said, I'm at odds. We're at odds between the CBS ownership and myself about the direction of CBS News, which is being viewed by many as, I think there was one anonymous CBS news reporter who told CNN, there is a feeling that there is a purging coming, within CBS News and CBS in general.
Certainly looks that way.
And it's extraordinarily disappointing for someone who has an affinity for the CBS brand because, I don't know, I guess because my grandparents as a kid, they always watched Walter Cronkite and then later Dan Rather. They will watch the local CBS affiliate Channel 3 here in Madison. And then the first job in radio I had was at a CBS Radio News affiliate, WRCO Richland Center, which of course now is part of Civic Media. And so I've just always had this deep respect for the history of the news at CBS. And to see that great, iconic news source, and don't get me wrong, there are still a lot of great reporters and producers at CBS, amongst them, of course, Scott Pelley, who I think is just the cream of the crop. Anderson Cooper works double duty for CNN and CBS. You've got, Bob Schieffer, I guess, is still technically part of, even though he's retired, but longtime CBS News. Leslie Stahl, one of the great reporters at CBS. She's been there forever. And then some of the daily people as well. Ed O'Keefe, who covers a lot of the political parts of CBS. Scott McFarland, who I think is one of the absolute best people in terms of covering the state capitol. Jan Crawford, one of the really premier reporters in terms of the court system in the U.S. So all these people and many, many more who have gone out of their way to continue the Edward R. Murrow commitment. For those of you who might be too young, Edward R. Murrow was one of the great radio and then early television reporters at CBS. His sign-off line was "Good night and good luck," and then they made a movie out of that, which George Clooney helped produce and was one of the supporting characters. And now they brought it back. It's running right now on Broadway out in New York as a stage play, in which now that Clooney is aged naturally into the role, he is now playing Edward R. Murrow in that stage adaptation of Good Night and Good Luck. And there's a long history of people, Edward R. Murrow amongst them, who sacrificed his own career because at the time you had Joe McCarthy, of course, from Wisconsin. That seat is now held by Ron Johnson. The irony is not lost there. But people like Edward R. Murrow and many, many more who over the years have said, no, I'm not going to sacrifice my journalistic integrity for a paycheck. And to go along with, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess to push down the truth. They've said, no, the truth comes first. I'm no Edward R. Murrow. I'm certainly no Walter Cronkite or Dan Rather, and never will be. But, and this is, we've said before, I don't consider this is not a journalistic news program. It's a news talk analyst program. But I apply journalistic integrity and standards to this show. I'm not interested in doing things to gin up or get clicks or anything like that, or enhance things. I'm here to suss out the truth, to look at all political spectrums, conservative, liberal, in between, and simply, as Anderson Cooper says, try to keep people honest, including myself. That, to me, the great privilege of coming on this air every day, having this microphone. I try to have a little bit of fun, try to lighten things up and make people laugh a little bit, but also when we're talking about news, to bring people the facts, the truth. It's as simple as that. I'm not a member of either Republican or Democrat. I'm a member of no party. And so just looking at the news and saying, look, here's the facts, I think that's a valuable service. So I'm very disappointed that CBS and Paramount have pushed out Wendy McMahon, and I hope that Sherry Redstone metaphorically grows a pair and stands up to Donald Trump. We'll come back and talk to Wisconsin Watch's very own Tom Kirchner after this as the Civic Media Radio Network's Town Hall Show.
This is 92.7 WMDX
Yeah, I mean,
Columbus.
CBS is largely responsible for the image of like a journalist, having the person who you trust to pursue the truth and tell it to you like it is. And I hate to think of that in the past tense, but soon it may be.
Yeah.
Along with food distribution,
We shall see.
something the UN rejects. ABC's Tom Sufi-Burrich has more.
It would be the Israeli military and private companies, American companies, strictly controlling zones where people would be vetted within Gaza to see if they could get access to humanitarian aid. Now, Israel says it is doing this to prevent, quote, aid falling into the hands of Hamas.
President Trump announced Ukraine and Russia are set to begin direct talks on a ceasefire deal immediately. It follows separate phone calls today between the president and leaders of both countries. No other details are known. The president this hour holding a signing ceremony
Oh, this
for
is
the
funny.
Take It Down Act passed by Congress earlier.
I have an
to
internal
combat
email, and
non-consensual
it says it's
deepfakes
from
and revenge
Dan
porn,
Sage.
an initiative led by
And I had a
First Lady
friend for a
Melania
number of
Trump.
years.
This is
His
ABC
name was
News.
Dan Sage. But here now I thought, what? I haven't heard from him in years. But no, it's Dan, comma, because it's Dan Schaefer, and then Sage. Wow, but it appears on my screen as Dan Sage.
That's funny.
civicmedia.us.
For 92.7 WMDX News, I'm Savannah Tomei Olson. The search continues for a missing boater after a sailboat tipped over in Lake Monona Friday night. 4 people were on board. 1 swam to shore and later guided rescuers to the area where the boat flipped. Authorities were able to rescue 2 people who were wearing life jackets, and that was a tough task. Officials from the Madison Fire Department say there were high waves and it was really tough to see. But a 4th person is still missing. The search for them continues today. And a key crossing that connects Wisconsin to Iowa is closed today and will likely stay that way for a bit. Jimmy Kuska reports.
The Blackhawk Bridge connecting Wisconsin to Iowa near Lansing is unexpectedly closed once again. The Iowa DOT said that movement was detected with one of the bridge's piers, prompting the closure. The bridge will be closed for at least this week and until further notice.
Hello, Mr.
Tom.
Kircher, Tom.
How are you doing?
Hey, guys. Hey, good.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Can you
Good way to
pronounce your
start the
last
week.
name, please? Make sure I have it right.
Kircher.
Kircher. All right, very good.
Yes.
All right, very good. Yeah, let's just start a little bit. Tell folks kind of where you're from, how you got. I'm always interested in people's stories, how you got into journalism a little bit, and then we'll get into. So you were up at the RPW convention.
Right.
I'm sorry about that.
It's fine. I'll be attending both of them. So
We did play to start off the show. I'm not sure if you heard that interview where Van Orden was asked why they keep losing the judicial elections. Well, too many elections. Gotta have fewer elections. And then they asked Schimming, do you agree with Congressman Van Orden? And Schimming cuts him off. Cuts the reporter off. Says, "I always agree with Derek Van Orden." What do you say? They said he wants to get rid of spring elections, and Schimming goes, "I mostly agree with everything Derek Van Orden says."
yeah. Did hear Schumann talk about that? Yeah.
That was absolutely gold for me. That's great.
Also, we are currently live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
Yes.
The radio show starts in a little over 2 minutes. Or, yeah, 2 minutes. I know what time it is.
Okay.
Hang on.
Todd, do you want to start with sort of bio who I am stuff? Do you want to start with the convention? Maybe walk me through what you're thinking.
Yeah, I think to start with the bio stuff, just kind of, I teased at the beginning of the show that Jack Kelly, like every man in my life, has left me.
Yeah, that was quick, right? Yeah.
I said, no. You got a great opportunity. And so now we're going to be joined by Tom Kircher at Wisconsin Watch. So,
Okay,
we'll talk a little bit about just the bio stuff, where you grew up, how you got into journalism, how long you've been at Wisconsin Watch, and then we'll go to the RPW stuff.
Okay, great. Sounds good.
And I'm just checking here. Because for some reason, I don't have I thought I had subscribed to the newsletter. I wasn't getting it, and then
Didn't Luke forward it to you?
He was going to. I don't see it, so I don't
Oh
have.
no.
I don't.
Okay.
I just FYI, I don't have the newsletter in front of me, so
Okay.
I'll kind of leave it to you to walk through parts of the stuff that's in the newsletter regarding the convention.
I don't think there's really anything in the newsletter about the convention other than a portion of my story that's on the website. So
Okay. All right. Cool.
yeah.
We got about 30 seconds here.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. I'm looking at the mute button at the bottom of my screen. I can do that if I need to clear my throat, I guess.
Live from the Civic Media World Headquarters in Madison, Wisconsin, it's the Todd Allbaugh Show. And now, pursuing truth wherever it may lead, here's your host, Todd Allbaugh.
Across Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network and streaming worldwide on the Civic Media app. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Todd Allbaugh, along with our producer and engineer, the fantastic Mr. Aaron Zommers, on the board. It is 6 minutes past the hour of 3 o'clock. Welcome into hour number 2 on the big program here. It is Monday, May 19th, 2025. It is a great day to be a Wisconsinite. Little, well, I would say mostly cloudy skies here at the world headquarters of Civic Media, looking out the windows over State Street, Zommers. A little cool. Probably, Zommers, this is exactly your kind of weather, right? Cool?
Absolutely. I've been enjoying this weekend. You know, my favorite part of the weekend, you know, I spent some time with friends I hadn't seen in a while. That was great. But the best part of the weekend was realizing, wait, I kind of want a blanket right now in the house. And, you know, it feels good to not be sweating out of my body.
And I'm happy for you. Don't get me wrong. I'm happy for you that it matches your body temperature. I like it a little warmer.
I also know I am unusual.
Yeah, well, in that regard, yes. But it'll warm up, I think, by the weekend, maybe back up into the 60s. But going to be a cool week. A little rain coming in, but many of the parts of Wisconsin could still use some rain, particularly in southwest Wisconsin. So good for them. Anyway, coming up a little bit later this hour, we're going to do our What's Worse edition today. An egg. EGG, an egg edition. Sunny side up or over easy. We'll discuss that in a little while and some other news along the way. But right now we are joined on a Monday by folks from Wisconsin to watch. Here's the deal. We had Jack Kelly, and he was fantastic. But after only a couple, 3 weeks, he said, I can't stand Allbaugh. I'm out of here. I'm leaving Wisconsin to watch. I'm going somewhere else. And no,
this is not accurate. That is not what happened.
He got another opportunity, as they say, at the University of Wisconsin. We're very happy for him. But now we're equally as happy and thrilled for to be joined by a brand new guest here on the show, another great Wisconsin Watch reporter. He is Tom Kircher, and he joins us live via StreamYard. Tom, welcome. How are you?
Hey, Todd. Very good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you, and thank you. After I was jilted by Kelly, it's nice that you've have come in to fill the role here. Before we get into, I know you're at the Wisconsin Republican Party convention this weekend. I'm sorry for that. But before we get into that, let's get into a little bit of who you are, where you grew up, and how you got into journalism.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So I grew up in Cedarburg, town of about 10,000, a little bit north of Milwaukee. Took a journalism class kind of by accident in high school, decided I wanted to be a newspaper reporter. So I pursued that at UW-Madison, worked at the Badger Herald. After graduation, worked for newspapers in Oklahoma, Illinois, California.
Wow.
Got a master's degree along the way at Ohio State, excuse me, and then made a homecoming in 1998, came to work for the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, was a news reporter there for 20 years. Took a buyout like many of us in 2019. Worked for myself for almost 6 years, freelancing for PolitiFact, Associated Press, Milwaukee Magazine, variety of publications. including eventually Wisconsin Watch. I freelanced for them for about a year and a half doing fact check stories. And then in October came on full time at Wisconsin Watch, and I continued to do fact briefs, as we call them, fact checking mostly politicians, and doing some other reporting, including things like covering the GOP convention over the weekend.
Wow, this is fantastic because I know this is a dated term. I have to update it. But you are a quintessential, I would call, newspaper man. You've been around. You've been to a lot of publications, and no offense against anybody else at any forms of media, but in my many years at the state capitol working with the press, usually newspaper men, women, people, but people who work in newspapers tend to be, in my opinion, more detailed oriented. They ask more specific questions. And, well, when I first started the building in 1992, I think there was the luxury then of having time to suss out stories. Talk a minute about the change in that industry, because when I left the building in 2015, you had fewer newspaper people under much tighter deadlines, having to file multiple stories in a day, which I think is to the detriment of sussing out the truth.
Yeah, well, thanks for the kind words. I think, and newspaper reporters generally do seek to be thorough and detail oriented. And, for most of my career, newspapers had a lot of primacy. Everybody read the paper. It seemed like people knew your name. People read your stories. And, that's changed not only with newspapers, but other legacy media over the years. There's still, really outstanding newspaper reporters in Wisconsin, and we're very fortunate to have that. In the meantime, we have the development of some other media, including Wisconsin Watch, which is a nonprofit news website, and so we don't print publications like newspapers, but we do stories like newspapers. In a sense, we're not out there on a daily basis producing many different stories like the Wisconsin State Journal or the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. We try to take a step back and do some deeper dives into stories, uh, primarily from a watchdog investigative point of view.
Mm. Well, I like you said, I mean, one of the guys, I mean, Steve Walters, who was at the Journal Sentinel for years and years and years, and now he's at Wisconsin Eye. I mean, those are the type of people that I've really admired over the years, and glad to have you aboard, and great to have you here,
Yeah,
Tom.
thank
All
you.
right, let's my pleasure. Let's get into a little bit. You were up in Rothschild, right? And I've, as a former Republican for almost 30 years, left the party in 2011. I've been to my share of Republican Party conventions, and as I said, you have my sympathies for that. They tend to they're unusual events. I haven't been to one in years and years. Any big takeaways, newsy items from the Republican Party of Wisconsin convention?
Well, let me maybe paint a picture for you first. So as you mentioned, the convention was in Rothschild, a small village near Wausau. Rothschild actually has a convention center, expo center. So you could picture sort of a standard ballroom where the convention itself was held on Saturday. And then just outside that ballroom was a kind of a narrow hallway where people could hang out a little bit. And there were quite a few tables for groups that were handing out literature and information like that. So, pretty standard event, about 500 delegates. These are mostly, I would call them grassroots or activist type people from around the state. Some of them are involved in their county Republican Party. Others are not. Others just showed up as interested Republicans. In terms of news, there weren't big announcements. There wasn't let's say, a surprise announcement for candidate for governor, for example. None of that. Um, what I tried to do, and again, Wisconsin Watch taking a little bit of a different approach to covering the news, is tried to toggle myself, if you will, between keeping an ear on the convention floor, seeing what was happening there, who was saying what, but also stepping outside the ballroom and interviewing rank and file Republicans. I tried to focus a little bit more on that, and I was able to speak to 9 different delegates from around the state.
What was your takeaway from those delegates? Those I'll call them party activists. What was your biggest takeaway as a reporter just listening to them? What did they want to talk with you about?
Well, I have to say I directed the conversation. First of all, I would just
Sure.
ask them simply why they were there, and then get into some questions. I tried to focus on two things. I wanted to hear what they thought of President Trump's first 4 months in office, and then secondly, looking ahead a little bit, what were they seeking from members of their own party with an eye toward 2026 and who might be running for governor?
And did you, when you brought up President Trump, were they all still very, very enthused, or were there anybody that said expressed to you, well, I voted for the guy, but I've been a little disappointed in X?
The 9 people who I buttonholed, they were all very enthusiastic, particularly with regard to the speed of things. There's other people out there who maybe are not fans of the president who might be bewildered, overwhelmed by just the sheer number and breadth of the actions he's taken in office. These people, as you might imagine, were excited about it. They felt like here's a guy who promised he would do A, B, C, D, and E, and boy, he's jumped in full speed on those things and more. I don't think any of them volunteered any reservations or disappointments. And I did ask each one after they described what they liked or how they assessed his term so far, if they had any disappointments or things they opposed. There was a little bit of that criticism, but very mild for the most part. People very enthused about the first 4 months.
I think this is really, really important reporting because on this program and others, not just on our network, other places, I think what we hear a lot or talk about a lot is, oh my gosh, I mean, look at what Trump is doing. This is abhorrent. He's attacking the Constitution. He's getting rid of due process. The list goes on and on. I think it's important to remember to contextualize it. There are still a lot of people, and probably I would say the majority of the 500 delegates this weekend, a lot of people are like, yeah, that's what I voted for. That's my president. I'm all in on this.
Yeah, I mean, there was no hesitation on the part of the people I spoke to. Very happy that he's cracking down on immigration. That was a common one. Very happy that he's trying to go after some tax cuts. Even tariffs. Tariffs have been received with a more mixed response from Republicans, largely opposed by Americans on the whole. But even with tariffs, people are like, I worried about my 401k retirement account. One of the delegates told me after the tariffs were first emerging, but she's sort of repeating the line, if you will, of patience. There might be some pain short term, but this is going to be worthwhile because they believe that there will eventually be more manufacturing jobs, for example, in the United States compared to what there are now. So, even with things that are more controversial, they were, still on his side for sure.
A little over a minute before we have to take a break here. We're talking with Tom Kircher from the Wisconsin Watch publication. You can find all of his work and many other great stories at Wisconsin, spelled out the entire word, wisconsinwatch.org. That's wisconsinwatch.org. I want to come back and talk about kind of this. You kind of alluded to it, what people's thoughts were for both the Wisconsin governor race coming up next year and even looking ahead to 2028 for the presidential race. But before that, in the minute or so we have left here, Brian Arthur Schimming, the chairman of the state Republican Party, going in, there was some talk about they wanted to take him out. He has survived. Schimming has survived. We can report that, correct?
Correct. He was just unanimously reappointed by the state GOP executive committee in December. So it might be a little surprising that this soon after that, there was some talk about possibly getting rid of him among some Republicans, but that really did not emerge during the convention. He seems to be safe for the moment, for sure.
He has hunkered down and he has survived. Also, there's a big kerfluffle on seating the state party treasurer who lost a race for delegate in her county. And how long did they debate that?
Oh, that was part of the time where I was sort of dashing in and out and viewing that as sort of inside baseball, and I would,
But
kind of dash out and try to interview some other people.
They finally
That's
sat
right.
her. She survived as well. Come on back. More with Tom on the other side. It's the Allbaugh Show on Civic Media. Very good. Very good.
I'm glad we ran out of time. I wouldn't have been able to speak intelligently about that.
No, again, as someone who likes the inside baseball stuff, I just thought, back in my day, that would have never even been a debate at that thing. They would have had that ironed out even before the convention opened. So I just find it interesting.
It didn't seem to derail things much. There was some raised voices, but it seemed to be pretty brief and, fairly tame, from what I can tell.
Oh, that's fantastic. I will come back and wrap this up. And then I also want to touch, if we can, on your story about bipartisan support building for a study of nuclear power plant in Wisconsin. I find that interesting. And I always like to point out at least, a shoot of green hope that maybe there's some hope of bipartisanship on some things.
Yeah. Bipartisanship on separate tracks, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Share the same passion for eye-catching art as Ignite Glass and Gifts, so we're showcasing their work alongside our talented local artists and our in-house Ignite artists. The latest techniques, the hottest colors.
So my recollection or understanding is that you kind of set this up with Jack to be a regular weekly thing on Mondays. But he just got started with it.
Right, pretty much. Because Matt's been on a few times before. I know Matt back from when he was in the Capitol and I was working for Dale Schultz. So that's kind of how it all went. Would you be interested in something like that, even if you couldn't do it every Monday, but fairly regularly? Would that work for you? Or
yeah, I think so. I'd want to talk to Matt about that because he just hit me up on Friday to.
That's fine.
See if I could do today, and I was happy to say yes. But
you don't have to commit to anything long term. But I guess the point is we would like to have, whether it's people that kind of trade off, so that maybe you do it once a month or a couple of times a month. But that I just think you guys do great work there, and to kind of bring another voice to the show of important issues that affect the entire state.
15 seconds.
All right.
Yeah. I think I like the idea, but if we could talk with him more about it, that'd be great.
Thanks. All right, here we go. Wherever it may lead, and having fun doing it. Welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. 22 minutes now past the hour of 3 o'clock. We are in the middle of our Monday Wisconsin Watch check-in, wisconsinwatch.org. You can find all these stories at wisconsinwatch.org. We are talking with Tom Kircher via StreamYard, one of the great reporters there at Wisconsin Watch. He was at the Republican Party of Wisconsin convention over the weekend in Rothschild, where Brian Arthur Schimming, I like saying his whole name, Brian Arthur Schimming, the chairman of the Wisconsin Republican Party, survived going into it. They made it seem to be more of a kerfluffle than maybe it actually was, but he has survived as party chairman. And Tom, to me, one of the interesting things was, I know you've done some reporting and talking to people. I know the folks at WisPolitics did an actual poll on who they would vote for if the election were held today for Wisconsin governor. What did you hear in some of your reporting?
So I think the consensus among the people I spoke to about that was that it's so early and they really the delegates would like to hear more from more people. A couple of the delegates were familiar with Josh Showman, the Washington County executive, who is the only announced candidate for governor on the Republican side. One woman in particular, Calumet County, met with him and some other of her fellow Republicans in that area, and she came away very impressed as a young military background guy that she thought had good potential. A couple of others mentioned Tom Tiffany, the congressman from northern Wisconsin. He has not announced, but there's been quite a bit of talk about him. His speech, notably, spent a lot of time criticizing Governor Evers. So whether that's an
Surprise,
indication of
surprise.
his intentions, who knows? But those were the only two names really that emerged among the people I talked to.
Yeah. I know it's with politics, but I just thought I'd bring it up for the fun of it because I like this kind of stuff. They do this straw poll. They do this every year at both Republican and Democratic conventions. They ask these type of straw poll questions. And for those listening that might know, there's you don't have to show an ID. Well, I think some of you have to show that you're a delegate. But other than that, it's just basically for fun. But Josh Showman, the business guy who's announced it's a Washington County executive, right?
Right.
Got 110 votes in the West Politics straw poll. Tom Tiffany, 103. Then it went down to Eric Hovde, 34. Pat Teston, state senator, 12. And then just a scattering after that. From people I hear that still talk to me, the Republican Party, I think Tom Tiffany is indeed serious. Like he's going to make a real run for this. Do you think there's any internal momentum based on what you heard at the state convention? Or as you said, is it just people aren't paying attention yet?
Yeah, it does seem to be really early. And I think the people I spoke to certainly are open to him as a candidate along with Showman. I think they're interested to hear more from both of those men and expecting that there very likely could be other candidates as well. A big variable, I guess, in all of this is whether Governor Evers decides to run for a third term or not.
Yeah.
If he runs, that's one set of dynamics. You've got an incumbent who's been relatively popular. If he doesn't run, it's an open seat. Perhaps that attracts more Republicans to jump in.
Other poll was Pulitzer. Other question they asked, and we bantered around here in the office today the wording of this. The question was, quote, the U.S. Constitution limits presidents to serving 2 terms. Barring a change to that law, whom would you support if the 2028 GOP primary for president were held today? Unquote. I said it makes perfect sense for me because I think if you just ask people in my former party, who would you support for president in 2028, they just say Trump, right? I think they had to qualify the question.
I suppose so. There's certainly been a lot of talk, including from Trump himself, sort of dangling this possibility of seeking a third term despite the Constitution. It seemed like not a surprise at all that rank and file Republicans would line up behind J.D. Vance as sort of their choice.
Vance got 191 votes in the straw poll. Ron DeSantis came in a distant second at 22. Then, as Trump calls him, Little Marco Rubio at 15 and Donald Trump Jr. at 13. So anyway, these are parlor games we play in these party events. But I find it interesting. Any other quick takeaways from the state Republican convention before we move on, Tom?
Oh, I think you've hit the highlights. It really was, for the most part, a calm affair, I would say. I mean, there's certainly the enthusiasm there. Ron Johnson revving up the crowd about growing deficits and growing debt, and Tiffany revving up the crowd with criticism of Evers. But, a little bit of tension here and there and on some, what you might describe as inside baseball issues. But for the most part, certainly seemed like an orderly and pretty enthusiastic gathering.
Speaking of Senator Ron Johnson, he's one of these, he calls himself ultra uber fiscal conservative, but he's one of these people that's saying, hey, not so fast. I'm not ready to pass Trump's quote unquote big, beautiful bill until I get more spending cuts. Meanwhile, guys like Derek Van Orton, the congressman of the 3rd District, is all in on Trump. There may be a little dissension within the Republican Party ranks in Wisconsin there at the federal level.
Yeah, there is. Johnson has been pretty consistent about his view of the need to cut spending. He gives speech after speech or interview after interview talking about how much deficits have grown, and particularly since COVID shutdown time, and arguing for the need to cut spending. So then you've got that in contrast with folks who are lining up behind the president and what's called the big beautiful bill, and that'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. Right up against the clock, Tom, but I'd love to have you come back. You wrote this great story. People should check it out at wisconsinwatch.org called Bipartisan Support Builds for Studying Nuclear Power in Wisconsin. I find it fascinating and maybe a little sprig of hope that they can talk about something in terms of unity. So check that out at wisconsinwatch.org. Tom Kircher, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it, and look forward, hopefully, to future visits with you.
Great. Thanks for the time.
My pleasure. Tom Kircher, everybody, from wisconsinwatch.org. All right.
Sorry, we just had our clock times change, and I ended it 10 seconds early.
Zombers
Sorry
was going with
about
the
that.
old clock, but that's fine. All right.
okay.
Appreciate you, Tom. Thank you very much.
Yeah. You're welcome,
All right.
guys. Hope to
Have
see
a
you
good
again
day.
soon.
Yep.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
People watching
Sorry
the
about
screen.
that.
And with many recent years of drought, and in Wisconsin's case,
Zombers is suffering
flooding,
from
the
premature
USDA works hard to
commercialization.
make sure that producers know what to expect.
He went too soon.
Brad Rippey, an agricultural
It happens to all of
meteorologist
us one
for the
day.
It
USDA
happens
Chief
to all of
Economist's office, is one of the original authors of the U.S. Drought Monitor. And as one of the original authors, he is here to give some insight into the current drought conditions across the U.S.
The percentage of the crops and commodities that are in drought, at least the area typically planted to those crops, as we start the month of May. Corn only 20% in drought, soybeans only 15%. You have to get to some of our Great Plains crops to see the higher numbers, like Durham wheat. Most of that area is in drought. That's confined to a pretty small area across the northern plains. So for the most part, we're looking pretty optimistic heading into the growing season. Numbers are a little higher in some cases than we'd like to see. That would include our hay production area, 28%, our cattle inventory,
I don't know how
31%
quickly you're
in the
trying
US.
to
Like to see
head
those numbers
out
come down a little bit,
this
but it's still better than
afternoon.
what
Do you
we have
want to
seen over
do
the
the
last
teaser
several
now?
months.
Brad Rippey giving
Oh,
us
yeah, 'cause
a
we got
look
Matt
into
here.
what
He's
drought
on
is currently
Mondays.
looking like in the U.S. From the
Or who?
Midwest
What?
Farm Report,
Matt
I'm Ben
Rothschild's
Jarbo,
here because he has to
and we'll
get right
take a
in
look
here.
at the
Yes, so
closing
we should do
markets.
that. All right.
Yep. And all right,
So I'm ready when you are.
3, 2, and 1. Hey, everybody, join us next time as Kira Sabin, our positivity psychologist coach, will be here in her second of a 3-part series on building community. Join us.
We got another one-take Todd, folks.
Even a blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while.
So true. So true. Blind squirrel finds a nut. Broken clock is right twice a day. Yada, yada, yada.
If you aren't
But
using
no,
a
Todd is
silage
not a broken
inoculant to
clock or a
preserve the
blind
quality
squirrel.
and nutritional
He's a
value of
professional.
high-quality silage, the answer is
Sometimes.
no. When you pair your high-quality silage with science-based, research-proven Silosolve brand products from Novonesis, not only are you supporting improved herd health and performance, but you know you're getting the maximum return on your feed investment. Talk to your local dealer about what sets Silosolve inoculants apart. Purchase your silage inoculant today.
I'm Ben Jarbo at the Midwest Farm Report. Now let's take a look at the closing markets. Cash corn is up 4 at 447.5, with new crop corn up 6 1/4 at 441 3/4. Cash soybeans are up 3/4 of a penny at 10.15 3/4, with new crop soybeans up 1.5 cents at 10.37. July wheat closed up 4 cents at 5.29. Class 3 milk is seeing losses as June contracts are down 24 cents at 18.99 a hundredweight, and July contracts are down 15 cents at 19 a hundredweight. 40-pound blocks closed down 3 1/4 at 189 3/4, and butter closed with no change at 234 1/4. For the Midwest Farm Report, I'm Ben Jarbo.
Enjoying this local program? Find the complete Civic Media lineup at civicmedia.us or the Civic Media app.
I'm meteorologist Mace Michaels. A wet pattern ahead, increasing clouds tonight, showers possible late, and a low in the low 40s. Scattered showers for tomorrow, high only near 50 and staying windy. Still a few lingering showers Wednesday, a high in the low 50s. Right now it's 53.
Wounded Warrior Project has been there for me since that first day in the hospital. They got me out of the house. They got me connected with other veterans, and they helped me face my PTSD. They support me and my family at every turn. And now I'm helping other warriors realize that they're not alone.
Through our hands-on programs, supportive community, and ongoing advocacy, we help post-9/11 veterans realize what's possible. Learn more
Unlike the
at
earlier song I used that was completely unrelated,
woundedwarriorproject.org/possible.
this song
The Meggie Dawn
is
Show.
related
Professor
to
Howard
what's worse.
Schwaber.
The point is worth making
All right,
that
very
an
good.
individual government official with the power to unilaterally declare that people can be
I
seized
need to get
without
new
any
promos.
opportunity of
I
a
have
hearing of
lots to
any
do.
kind is getting really
30
close
seconds.
to the
Thank you.
model of rule.
How do you like your eggs in the morning?
I like mine with a kiss.
Boiled or fried?
I'm satisfied as long as I get my kiss.
How do you like your toast in the morning?
I like mine with a hug.
Dark or light?
The world's all right as long as I get my hug.
Welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. We're cooking in the kitchen. Isn't that the name of the Joe Gow podcast?
Close enough.
Okay. 35 minutes past the hour of 3 o'clock. Welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. Who sings that, Zommers? Do we know?
That is Helen O'Connell and the name that you will actually know, Dean Martin.
I was going to say, I thought it sounded an awful lot like the late, great Dean Martin there. That's great. We're talking about eggs, by the way. And many thanks to Tom Kirchner from Wisconsin Watch. Great to have him along this week, and we'll check in with someone else, hopefully, from Wisconsin Watch next Monday as well. But the song plays well into what's worse. It's 36 past the hour of 3 o'clock. Here we go, Zommers. Let's do it. What's worse?
Then, of course, the choice is yours. You can get with this or you can get with that.
Time once again for what's worse. Nothing to give away, no prize money involved, but it is your chance to have your voice heard across the entire state of Wisconsin on all 11 news, talk, and sports stations in the Civic Media Radio Network. Glad to have you along. All right, here it is. Timely indeed. That was a great. I can't do better than a Dean Martin song, for goodness sake.
Who can?
Right? Who can? So let's just get right into it. And this is a breakfast or a brunch question, or actually, I've had eggs for dinner. Have you?
Within the last week, yes.
See? Well, what's better? I mean, scrambled eggs, even a fried egg, even an egg sandwich.
I love to. I mean, this may give away my answer for what's worse. I love to have me a good old fried egg, and I'll make some toast.
Really?
And
Yeah.
when the toast pops up, the egg is still cooking. I'll put some cheese on the toast. And so it starts to
Cheese,
melt
all
from the
right,
heat of the toast. And then I'll put the fried egg on top of the cheese. And so it melts the cheese the rest of the way. And you got a nice little open-faced sandwich. And I'll do 2 of those, and it's a great meal.
Look at that. I'm feeling, now we have this big new table here in the studio. I have a mobile, like, gas little hot top, or not hot top, what do you call it? Cooktop thing. And I'm thinking I should bring that in. We should do an actual cooking segment here now on the show. That could
be a lot of fun.
That could be a lot of fun. All right, here's the question. What's worse, sunny side up or over easy? Sunny side up or over easy?
You know, some people don't like eggs that are undercooked, but which way of undercooking is worse?
What's worse, sunny side up or over easy? 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842, or you can text us on the Civic Media app. If you don't have it, download it to your Apple or Android device. It is free. It takes less than a minute. It's what CBS's Gail King, at least for now, calls a deal. I'm not sure what she's going to be able to say anymore under this new deal with Sherry Redstone. It's
a shame.
It's a shame. It's a damn shame. That's exactly what it is. 855-752-4842. 855-752-4842. Let's go to the phone lines. Brian on WAUK in Milwaukee. Brian, thanks for calling in. Sunny side up or over easy? What's worse?
Well, if it's any form of a runny yolk, I hate it. I cannot stand runny yolks in any way, shape, or form. It's a texture thing.
Texture.
And so I always have to have what's called over hard.
Yeah.
Or technically a fried egg, but it has to be like fried. And the one thing that I love, my grandfather would make what's called egg and bread, and you crack the egg in a small pan, and then you kind of break in the yolk, and you put a piece of bread over that.
Oh.
And you let the bread cook into the yolk, and then you take the bread and you flip it over so that it cooks fully through the bread, so that there is no runny yolk.
Wow!
And
all
that's
right.
what we call an egg and bread.
An egg and bread.
I've been having eggs my whole life. Mm-hmm.
Look at this. We got a cooking segment over the radio. I love it. Well done, Brian. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. 855-752-4842. 855-752-4842. What's worse, sunny side up or over easy? 855-752-4842, or you can text us on the Civic Media app like AJ here in Madison did on WMDX. He says, over easy is worse. I like dunking my toast into the middle, and that's what my dad has, or always has, what my dad always has.
So I feel like they mean that over easy is better, but I guess you can kind of dip into either of those.
I do both. See, I respect Brian. I mean, and eggs are something that a lot of people are particular on, but I'll talk about mine in a minute. First of all, a brand new caller, texter on WMDX. We appreciate your listenership. Says, over easy is worse. Too many broken yolks when you flip them. That's Henry from Madison. Henry, appreciate you listening and texting in. Now, see, that's a big thing, too. If you decide to do over easy and then you break the yolk and you're going for a soft yolk and then it just...
That's how you get over hard, as Brian said. It's the same as over easy, except you break the yolk.
Also happens with too many Viagra, but that's a whole other show. Anyway, Brian in Milwaukee says runny yolks are like eating snot. Not only would I know, not that I know what eating snot is like. All right. Oh, Cam in Appleton says both are worse. I cook them with an ice cube. With an ice cube? Cam, what the heck are you talking about?
I do not understand.
AJ in Madison said, no, I said that wrong. I like over easy.
So yes, AJ did mean that sunny side up is worse.
I've never cooked an egg with an ice cube. What does he even mean?
I don't know what that means.
I don't either. Jim in Brookfield texted in, says over easy is worse. It's too easy to overcook. Sunny side up is certain to be a little runny, which is just how I like them. Jim from beautiful Brookfield.
I looked it up. And according to Google's AI overview, which in this case I trust because it's a pretty simple concept, using an ice cube.
Wait, have we gone to AI now on cooking eggs? Yes, this is the answer. All right,
Fine, I'll go to a different.
No, use
okay.
it. What does it say?
Using an ice cube to cook an egg, sometimes referred to as ice cube steaming, involves you crack, or well, Cam also just sent a text. Now I'll just read that. I'll finish that. It's super easy, an old bar style way of doing it. Put the egg in the hot pan, pop an ice cube in the pan, and put the lid over it. Then you get the steam from the ice cube, and the steam helps cook the egg.
Okay, I'm sorry. I do that all the time, but I don't use an ice cube. I take a little water from my tea kettle, or I just throw a little water in and put a lid over it. You don't have to use an ice cube.
Fair, but it also works.
Oh, I'm sure it does. But yeah, you steam it, basically. My little sister checking in, Heather Allbaugh Galoy in beautiful Eau Claire, Wisconsin, where we'll be. The show will originate from the greater Chippewa Valley on Thursday and Friday of this week. She says, oh, here we go. Here we go. Slimy sunny side up is disgusting. Unless it's done like our Grandma Wallace when she splashed bacon grease up and over. Then it looks like over easy. Yum. But then you might need to holler when the grease gets you. My grandma would always fix bacon, not all, most of the time, bacon. And then she would fry the eggs in bacon grease.
Oh yeah. If I'm making a bigger breakfast that has bacon and eggs or brunch or whatever, I will try to do the bacon first because, it takes longer. Right. And then instead of using butter or whatever, just use the bacon grease to cook the eggs.
So our grandmother would just leave the egg sunny side up, but then she'd use a spoon and she'd throw the bacon grease up over the yolk to create like a little skin.
Now that I've never done, but it sounds good.
And sometimes it would pop up on her hand. She'd go, ow! Like that. If grandma was yelling in the kitchen in the morning, it's probably because she splashed bacon grease on herself. But yeah, I've done that quite a bit. I've done that. I tend to do more over easy. You, Zommers?
Yeah, I gotta say, I think sunny side up is worse because I love a good runny yolk. I understand some people don't from the texture, but especially with bread or something, bread or hash browns, like when you have something for the yolk to soak into, I think that's delicious.
Absolutely.
I'm not as big a fan of the runny white. Like I'll still eat a sunny side up egg, but I just prefer over easy.
Yeah, I agree. I like the white to be set a little bit more.
Yeah, me too.
Megan in Sun Prairie, listening on WMDX, says, sunny side up is just weird to me. I need the yolk to be a bit more set or a different cooking style altogether. Love me some scrambled.
One note, a couple people texted in saying that over easy is harder to cook because you might pop the yolk, to which I say, okay, so what? Like if I don't dislike a cooked yolk,
right.
I prefer one a little runny, but if I pop it on accident, oh well, I still am eating an egg that I enjoy.
No, but
personally.
see, when I do that, I'm always ticked off at myself because now the whole point, because I too like a runny yolk. I like something to dip my toast in,
right,
or maybe a pancake or whatever. And so if I broke the yolk in the pan, then I'm like, oh, what's the point? I'll still eat it.
I guess I'm a bit more laissez-faire or c'est la vie with my egg making.
You're like eggs are eggs. Yeah. Now, here's a question on scrambled. Do you use water or milk in your scrambled eggs?
I did not know anybody uses water in scrambled eggs.
Really?
I use milk.
I learned this years ago from the cooking or from the food channel. I believe it was Alton Brown, that if you use water, it makes it a lighter or whatever, more fluffy, more the French style.
I believe it.
But just a little bit. You can't have too much water; they get runny. And then Bobby Flay on Breakfast with Bobby Flay. Yes, I do watch a lot of Food Network. You take these scrambled eggs for low and slow. First of all, says Bobby Flay on scrambled, low and slow on the heat.
Agreed.
And then you kind of make a figure 8 with your spatula or whatever, and then let them set. And then don't over mix them, and then remove the scrambled eggs when they still look wet. Don't remove them when they're dry because they overcook. So you remove the pan when the scrambled eggs are a little bit wet. That's the key on scrambled eggs.
My youngest sister loves them super dry, and so I'll cook it beyond the point that I think it's done.
No.
Like I've made eggs for her a few times, and I'll cook the scrambled eggs, and I'll be like, "These are probably done. Let's wait 5 more minutes." All right, these are probably done. Let's wait even longer. And then I'll bring her in and be like, "Do these look all right?" And she's like, "Nah, keep going."
Oh, for goodness sakes. What else do we have? Cam, let's see. What else do we have? Brian in Milwaukee says, now I'm hungry. I think we're going to have to make eggs for dinner. Thank you for the idea. Well, you're so very welcome. Steve in Milwaukee on the text line says, over hard, no sunny side up. Ew. And Joshua up in WXCL in beautiful Wausau, Wisconsin, Bull Falls Radio says, heavy cream in scrambled eggs. Well, there.
That's what I've been doing because my roommate, Elliot, we both love eggs. We will often have eggs for dinner. He, despite being from Illinois, is a Wisconsin boy through and through and loves dairy. I would estimate that half of his calories in a day are dairy. And so maybe not quite, but close. And so he always is like, all right, we're doing heavy cream. It's dairy time.
All right. Well, I would say that sunny side up is slightly worse because, like Zombers, I like my whites in my fried eggs set a little bit more. So that's my vote. Did you vote?
Yes, I agree. Sunny side up is worse.
All right, there you go. Another edition of What's Worse. Be tuned in tomorrow. We'll have a brand new edition for you at hour number 2. Always fun, always fascinating. What's Worse? So Dan, a late entry by Dan in Wausau, mix cottage cheese in your scrambled eggs. Really?
I could see that being good.
Maybe. Best cottage cheese, Zombers? Do you have a favorite?
No, I have not experimented too much with the brands.
Southwest Wisconsin, Westby cottage cheese. Absolutely fantastic. All right, that does it for our eggs. We'll come back, wrap things up with a little broadcast news. It's the Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Weather and sports on air and streaming on the Civic Media app. This is the Civic Media Radio
Cam in
Network.
Appleton says, Dan is 50 years old. Don't listen to him.
Hi, Gordy Kopke here. When I
I'm
first invited
55.
folks to my farm 40 years ago, I could never have dreamed that would become the area's largest greenhouse. With a focus on quality
I don't know,
plants
Tony.
at
I mean,
reasonable prices
a
and
fried egg
special
in
emphasis
bacon
on customer
grease,
service,
where it's a little
we
bit
have
crispy
received
around
the
the
People's
edge,
Choice
but the
Award
yolk is still
as
soft.
Madison area's best
That's hard to
greenhouse.
beat.
I will
Located
say,
2 miles east of
hey,
Oregon
for those
in the
who
beautiful
may
town
not
of
be
Dunn,
watching
I invite you out to see
or
why
as
we are not
actively
only
and don't
the
see what we're
area's
talking about,
largest
Tony
greenhouse,
commented,
but
we all agree that
also
scrambled
the
eggs are the best eggs, right?
Cool off
I will
the
say they're the
summer
most
at
versatile, they're the
Frosties.
most
West Madison
customizable
small batch ice
because
cream
you can
shop.
put so many
Rich
different things in
handcrafted
them, cook them
flavors
different
and
ways,
soak up the
make
sun
omelets
on
with
the outdoor
them,
patio.
get them real
And if you mention
fluffy
you
or
heard
whatever.
this
Like
on the radio,
you
get
can
5%
really get
off.
exactly the
Frosties,
texture you want.
702 South Gammon Road.
Somers is fluffing his eggs.
How you doing?
Oh, Arthur, great to see you. What are you doing?
Look,
in
someone's
the
got to
studio?
do it.
Well, I need to talk to you about
I'm
doing
not
a
above it.
commercial.
Okay. Well, to get a commercial on the air here, you just go down to the sales department. It's right next to the bathroom.
I don't think you understand.
Oh, I understand plenty. You salespeople drink a lot of coffee. That's why the bathroom's right there.
Right, but I need
Tony
to have
says, you mess
make
up
a
Sunnyside and
commercial
boom, you
about
can still make
commercials.
scrambled.
Wait. A
Yeah?
commercial about a
Yeah, I
commercial?
suppose. That's
I
to a
don't
degree, yeah.
follow.
I want to tell potential business owners out there how to contact me to get a commercial on WMDX.
Ah, okay, I get it. Okay, let's come up with something. Let's see. Business folks can contact you directly, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
what's the email, huh?
Okay, so it's sales at WMDXradio.com.
Wait, run that by me.
Sales at WMDXradio.com. So we could put all that together and get into a commercial, get on the air soon?
Arthur, my friend, I think we just did.
Advertise on WMDX Radio. Email Arthur, sales at WMDXradio.com.
Where did, is that
I'm
Cam?
Dan Schaefer.
Who
Let's
is that?
recombobulate.
Yeah, that's Cam.
We are in a rare moment right now.
Where did he
in
find
Wisconsin
that
politics.
photo?
I don't know.
Why,
He
you ask?
likes putting
Well,
pictures,
it's
just
because
random
we are not
pictures on the
actively
board
in the
behind
middle of
Marjorie
a
Taylor
campaign
Greene.
cycle. It's been more than 6 weeks now since any of us have seen a campaign.
Was that during my
ad.
coffee
It's
shop
been
days?
pretty nice, hasn't
Put
it?
it down a
Probably.
little bit.
The moment we're in
for-
is as close
probably
as we're
for
going
my-
to get to a political off season.
I mean,
here
that's
in
obviously not the
Wisconsin.
date from that
And
picture.
we need to take advantage of this moment by taking
It's
action
the date from
to improve
Marjorie Taylor
our
Greene's
democracy.
presentation.
That means taking steps to address money in politics, cleaning up some
That's
issues
very
with election
discombobulating,
administration, and creating a long-term plan for nonpartisan redistricting. In some cases, we can't make these kinds of changes in the middle of a campaign, so we need to be thinking about what we can do now. There's a lot both parties can agree on here, too. So let's make some moves this offseason, Wisconsin. Seize this moment to make a better, stronger, more inclusive democracy.
Find all of
30
Dan's work at the
seconds.
Recombobulation area and on our website.
Welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network, where it is now 8 minutes before the hour of 4 o'clock. At the top of the hour, pardon me, ABC or CBS News, depending upon which of our great stations that you're listening to across the Civic Media Radio Network. A little weather update for you. Cooler indeed. Parts of northern Wisconsin, northeastern Wisconsin had to cover up the flowers last night. Little nip in the air, as they say. So be aware of that. But it's going to stay cool, or as Albert Childress at Channel 15 said for years, could be cool tonight. So it'll be cool the rest of the week. Temperatures in the 50s, maybe getting up into the 60s by the weekend. But hey, it's spring in Wisconsin. Sometimes it's better to have these. This is really a true spring. Oftentimes you kind of go from winter right into summer, right? Winter, and then all of a sudden 2 weeks later, it's 85 degrees and we're off to the races and it never stops. This is just a typical Wisconsin spring. So nothing to be upset about. Although I think people for Memorial Day weekend would like warmer temperatures to go camping and the like. By the way, I have not done this yet. It is time once again for Todd's annual reminder about Memorial Day weekend and Memorial Day sales, quote unquote. Something that is a pet peeve of mine that sticks in my craw. And this is from my work for many years for our former Congressman Scott Klug, where I had the honor and privilege to handle military affairs and worked with a variety of active duty military and also had the honor of working with our veterans as well. Remember, folks, Memorial Day is a solemn, serious holiday. It's always good to remember our veterans, those who are actively in our armed forces, as well as the veterans who have served before. But Memorial Day is about those who died in service. It is about one day set aside out of 365 to remember those who gave the ultimate sacrifice, for those that died. All right? Veterans Day in November is to remember all veterans, those alive, those past. All right? So a pet peeve of mine is when people say, have a happy Memorial Day. Because I have worked with people who lost loved ones in active service. And when you're in Arlington or any other cemetery across this country, there is nothing happy about Memorial Day. It's the solemnest of solemn holidays. It's a day of reverence. And what really, to use the old phrase, grinds my gears is when people in retail and business have Memorial Day sales. Let's take a day where someone's dad or partner or grandparent got killed in the line of service, and let's use that to sell a mattress.
It's always mattresses.
Or furniture.
Yeah, generally
or
furniture.
bedding. And I know that it's kind of the holiday. It's kind of, well, it's the start of summer, and if you talk to, I did not serve, as I've said, but if you talk to those who did, nobody begrudges people to go out and have a good time on Memorial Day weekend and enjoy a picnic, but because that's what people fought and died for, was our freedom for this country. But for businesses, there are 364 other days out of the year to have a sale around. And the idea to me of having a Memorial Day sale and advertising that and making money off of someone's death is sick. And I'm just very opposed to it. And I think it's very disrespectful for people that have Memorial Day sales. When I used to own a business, a coffee business, the first year we closed for half a day, and after that we closed for the entire day. And just says, look, it's a day of memory. And again, I have no problem with people going out and having fun on Memorial Day weekend, but I would hope that at some point during the weekend, you take time out of your weekend to at least think about. If you're not a person of faith, fine. I try to say a quick prayer. But think about those who have lost loved ones. And if you have time, tune in to PBS on Sunday night. Sunday, May 25th, 7 o'clock Central on PBS. It's the National Memorial Day Concert. Once again, the great Joe Montana is one of the co-hosts, a Tony Award-winning actor, veterans advocate. And it's a great, great show on PBS Sunday night at 7 o'clock where they profile veterans who gave everything and tell their story. And they have the national military bands. They have singers. It's a movie. I've never watched it and at some point not gotten emotional. That is what Memorial Day is about. And I hope that we could all agree, regardless of whatever our political affiliation is, regardless of how we might feel about military actions, which is a fair debate to have, but we should never debate the sacrifice that our men and women have made so that we have the freedoms to enjoy those picnics. So that's my thoughts about that. My annual Memorial Day remembrance, to take time out to remember those who gave all. And to businesses, you don't have to use Memorial Day to have a sale and to advertise. You can do that 364 other days a year. And we don't have a lot of time now, but the men and women who died, they died for all of our freedoms, including the freedom of the press. And this story I talked about earlier, CBS News boss Wendy McMahon exiting CBS today. Also a story we will get to tomorrow. Donald Trump now threatening ABC News over the coverage of the Qatari jet that he intends to accept for $400 million.
Or a $400 million jet that he intends to accept for free.
Thank you for saying it better. That's the show for today. We'll talk about these issues and more tomorrow. Take time out to say thank you to those who served and to remember those families whose loved ones gave everything. Many thanks to Tom Kirchner from Wisconsin Watch, to Zommers as well. All of you for listening. Maggie Dawn is next. We'll see you tomorrow, whatever you're fighting for, whatever you believe in. Do not give up. Keep banging your drum. See you tomorrow.
Adios, everybody.